Introduction to Conservation Agriculture. Conventional arable agriculture is normally based on soil tillage as the main operation. The most widely known tool for this operation is the plough, which has become a symbol of agriculture. Soil tillage has in the past been associated with increased fertility, which originated from mineralization of soil nutrients as a consequence of soil tillage. This process leads in the long run to a reduction of soil organic matter content. Soil organic matter not only provides nutrients for the crop, but it also a crucial element for the stabilization of soil structure. Therefore, most soils degrade under prolonged intensive arable agriculture. This structural degradation of the soils results in the formation of crusts and compaction, and then leads to the end to soil erosion. The process is dramatic under tropical climatic situations, but can be noticed all over the world. Mechanization of soil tillage, allowing higher working depths and speeds, and the use of certain implements like ploughs, disc harrows, and rotary cultivators have particularly detrimental effects on soil structure. Certain operations such as ploughing with moldboard plough or disc ploughing have a stronger impact on soil life than others, such as ploughing using chisel ploughs. Most tillage operations are, however, targeted at loosening the soil, which inevitably increases its oxygen content, leading in turn to the mineralization of the soil organic matter. This ultimately leads to a reduction of soil organic matter in the soil, which is the substrate for soil life. Look at this photograph. This is disc ploughing situation on an agricultural field. See the loosening of soil structure, disturbing the soil structure, loosening of topsoil, and disturbing the soil life a lot is happening through this kind of disc ploughing. Not only that, this also releases minute soil particles into the atmosphere, ultimately polluting atmosphere as well. This picture shows a degraded agricultural land. Because of the clearing of natural vegetation or ecosystems or forest patches, and cultivating these lands or using these lands for cultivation practices have raised the soil erosion process and aggravated the soil erosion process, and then ultimately degrading the land. This land is no more suitable for cultivation of crops. Soil erosion resulting from soil tillage has forced the agriculturists to look for alternatives and to reserve the process of soil degradation. Logical approach to this has been to reduce tillage. This interest finally led to a movement promoting conservation tillage. and especially zero tillage, particularly in southern Brazil, North America, New Zealand and Australia starting at the first. Over the last 2 decades, the technologies have been improved and adapted for nearly all farm sizes, soils, crop types and almost all climatic zones. This process leads to new agricultural movement called as conservation agriculture. Excessive soil tillage of agricultural soils may result in short-term increasing in fertility, but will degrade soils in the medium term. The structural degradation, loss of organic matter, erosion and falling biodiversity are all could be expected in the long run. Look at this photograph. This is a situation where the ploughing of an agricultural land is happening using tine tillers or chisel ploughs. You will observe here there is no much disturbance to the deeper soil layers and loosening only the top soil, making lesser structural disturbance in the soil. This is we called as minimum tillage. Conservation agriculture methods are much more than just reducing mechanical tillage. Soil that is not tilled for many years, the crop residues remain on the soil surface and produce a layer of mulch. This layer protects the soil from the physical impacts of rain and wind, but it also stabilizes the soil moisture and temperature in the surface layers. This zone becomes a habitat for a number of organisms, from larger insects down to soil-borne fungi and bacteria. These organisms grind the mulch, incorporate and mix it with the soil and decompose it so that it becomes humus and contributes to the physical stabilization of the soil structure. The soil organic matter provides a buffer function for water and nutrients. Large components of the soil fauna, such as earthworms, provide soil structuring effect, producing very stable soil aggregates as well as uninterrupted macropores. These lead to the soil surface to be straight to the subsoil and allowing fast water infiltration in case of heavy rainfall events. This picture shows an accumulation of crop residues on the cultivating lands and then ultimately preparing it as a mulch. So this thick layer of crop residues is protecting the soil from different disturbances and acting as a substrate for the various kinds of soil-borne organisms and ultimately helping to increase the soil health. This is another situation on a maize growing land. After harvesting of maize crops, the different residues of the maize cultivation is left on the soil, making a mulch on the soil surface and helping to protect the soil and then ultimately increase the soil health. Look at this figure. This shows you how the soil is acting when there is a mulch on it. Look at the left side. You can see clearly there is a mulch on the soil surface in an cultivation land. Crops are there. When there is heavy rain comes, the mulch absorbs those heavy rains and do not allow to disturb to the soil. And then mulches ultimately increases the infiltration capacity and then moisten the soil. But in case of agricultural activities on a bare soil, when heavy rain comes, the rain drops, loosen the soil particles and then ultimately splashes them, leading to soil erosion. This soil erosion ultimately brings different nutrients and soil particles from the agricultural fields to other destinations. On the other hand, when there is a mulch on the soil surface, it really helps for the amelioration of soil temperature. When solar radiation reaches the ground, the part of that radiation is reflected back and part is absorbed to the soil. In that way, the soil temperature is ameliorated. Then these conditions ultimately provide comfortable environment for the soil organisms, macrofauna and microfauna to live in the soil and make the soil more healthy. But where it is a bare soil, the solar radiation brings heat and heat is absorbed to the soil and heat is building up in the soil. And because of that, soil moisture is getting evaporated from the soil, as well as the increased soil temperature is not providing very good environment for the soil fauna and macro and micro soil fauna to live in the soil in a comfortable way. Let's see what is called as edaphone. Edaphone is the composite of organisms that live in the soil, which is responsible for biological tillage. Biological tillage is not compatible with mechanical tillage, and with increased mechanical tillage, the biological soil structuring process will disappear. Look at this photograph. You will see the earthworms are really living in the soil and then loosening the soil, adding different nutrients to the soil and then ultimately increasing the soil, improving the soil structure and its fertility. In the right side, you will see a situation where there is a mechanical till soil. The soil structure has disturbed a lot and roots are also not growing in a healthy way. Therefore, agriculture with reduced or zero mechanical tillage is only possible when soil organisms are taking over the task of tilling the soil naturally, which is called as biological tillage. This, however, leads to other implications regarding the use of chemical farm inputs. The use of synthetic pesticides and mineral fertilizers in this special agricultural technique, which we called as conservation agriculture, has to be used in a way that it does not harm the soil life. Conservation agriculture is also dealing with reduced burning of crop residues on the agricultural field and integrated pest management strategies. As the main objective of agriculture is the production of crops, changes in the pest and weed management become necessary with conservation agriculture. Burning plant residues and ploughing the soil is mainly considered necessary for phytosanitary reasons such as controlling pests, diseases and weeds. In a system with reduced mechanical tillage based on mulch cover and biological tillage, alternatives have to be developed to control pests and weeds. At this destination, integrated pest management becomes mandatory. Burning crops and weed residues destroys an important source of plant nutrients and soil improvement potential. The phytosanitary motives for burning and ploughing can better be achieved by integrated pest management practices and crop rotations. Another important element in conservation agriculture is crop rotation, which really interrupting infection chain between subsequent crops and making full use of the physical and chemical interactions between different plant species. Synthetic chemical pesticides, particularly herbicides, in the first years are inevitable but have to be used with great care to reduce the negative impacts on soil life. To the extent that a new balance between the organisms of the farm ecosystems, pests and beneficial organisms, crops and weeds becomes established and the farmer learns to manage the cropping system. Then the use of synthetic pesticides and mineral fertilizers tends to decline to a level below that of the original conventional farming system. This photograph shows a crop rotation. Crop rotation is rotating of crops of different families on the same parcel of land, or else rotating crops on different parcels of lands and continuing this cycle. Crops from different families are attracted with different pests, sometimes weeds as well. In this situation, when growing crops from different families breaks the life cycle of pests and then control the pest. Not only that, when we incorporate leguminous crops to our cycle, our rotation, it fixes atmospheric nitrogen and increases the fertility of the growing soil. This is another situation where intercropping is practiced. Intercropping is called as growing one, two or more crops on same land simultaneously in a stipulated time, hopefully a year. In this situation as well, the crops from different families are selected so that the pest attacks could be minimum. In this photograph, you can see maize and pigeon pea intercropping system. Finally, conservation agriculture is characterized by three linked principles. The first one, minimum soil disturbance by means of zero tillage or minimum tillage. Second one, permanent soil cover by means of maintaining crop residues or live mulching. The third one is crop rotation or intercropping as a means of diversification of cropping on the land. Then, what is the definition for conservation agriculture? Conservation agriculture is an approach to managing agroecosystems for improved and sustained productivity, increased profits and food security, while preserving and enhancing the resource base and the environment, as per the Food and Agriculture Organization 2015.